Yo, what's good, y'all? We are back with another video. How strong was Asta with magic? This movie was peak. We know that. We know this movie was peak. But let's try and find out how strong Asta was with magic. Let's get to this video.
Sword of the Wizard King features a monumental moment for both the series and Asta as a character. Asta finally wields magic. But wait, can we really consider this the first time, as we have seen what he's done with the Demon Dweller sword in the past? But let's talk about the Imperial sword and how strong Asta is while using it, and answer the question if this makes sense or if this should have ever been theoretically possible in the first place. And I actually have a theory about what he's really doing here, and it might not be as simple as you think. If you guys end up enjoying my channel and my coverage of the Black Clover Sword of the Wizard King movie, then please leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications. You can also follow me on Twitter and join my Discord, link down below. So I think it's best to go over what Elsdosia, the Imperial Sword, is.
I wonder if he's going to talk about the manga.
What it does, etc. The Imperial Sword was created by the first Wizard King, Lumiere Silvamillion Clover, as he wanted to have a sword that could absorb magic power and very powerful magic abilities, so that anyone could have access to powerful magic even if they were born with weak magic. It makes me wonder if Lumiere made the sword upon inspecting his best friend, Licked Swords, as it does share qualities with the Demon Dweller sword. Contained within the space of the Imperial sword is a weird kind of space with stars in it that has stored magic power, magical attributes, and fractions of the souls of each Wizard King. Not only that, but the sword can be used to steal the magic power of anyone in the vicinity. The Imperial sword allows the wielder to summon that power, but also even combine all the magical attributes into a singular compound spell. Okay, but then Asta used it. Asta has anti-magic, and he didn't just use the sword, right? The sword imbued him with magic power. Well, to be honest, I really don't think it's that crazy for Asta to be able to use magic. It would be one thing if he just randomly started using magic with no explanation, all of a sudden he just starts blasting beams of mana out of his hand. But he's actually using a magic item where its very purpose is to give people with weak or little magic and make them strong. We also have to remember that Lumiere was able to make some crazy items when he paired his power and talents with Sekira's ancient sealing magic. He was able to create a device that just stole an entire tribe of elves' magical power and could give it to anyone else. And the Imperial sword is even greater than that. Also remember that it affects the soul itself. It stores and absorbs the souls of those it comes in contact with. And that is what I believe to be the crux of why Asta can use the Imperial sword. Even though he has anti-magic, the soul is everything. According to one of the most knowledgeable characters in the verse, Lucius Sagratis, the soul is the source of life, energy, the mind, and magic itself. Remember that when a mage receives a grimoire, their soul bonds with it and becomes an extension of himself. This is why you can't normally steal someone's grimoire, and why when someone dies, their grimoire dies with them. This is also why when Lucius literally creates clones of himself by just making bodies, they also have grimoires identical to his grimoire. Here's what I think might actually be going on here. This right here is not magic, it's the soul. It's soul power. This can be substantiated as a possibility, as we already know the sword affects the soul, as it knocks a part of Conrad's soul out of his body. And even the color of Asta's aura and Conrad's soul are identical. What I think could be happening is that the Imperial sword isn't just giving Asta magic conventionally, as if we're just filling him with magic. It's actually using soul power, something that anti-magic is not designated to go against, and that soul power is what is filling him with strength, and giving him power through that medium. I might ask, if soul magic doesn't work on Asta's anti-magic as we've seen with Lucius, why would it be different here? And that's because Lucius' magic is to manipulate the soul, it's still magic, whereas I'm saying that if the sword is just soul power, not actually magic, it's a completely different source of energy, then there is no reason for this to be that crazy of an occurrence. The soul is so different from magic that even when William was cursed, when Patri took over the body, the curse would go away, because the curse affects the soul, not the body. Okay, let's say my theory's wrong though. Let's just say the Imperial sword is just giving him magic power, nothing else, nothing related to the soul. Why is the anti-magic not destroying it? Well, it could be that the magic is just way too strong to completely nullify it. This happens all the time in Black Clover, like Nox Shadows grabbing Asta's anti-magic swords, Liebe being bound by magic even though he is the anti-magic devil. Also, it has now been 4 times that Asta has used the Demon Dweller sword, an anti-magic sword, to absorb magic and launch it back without destroying said magic. So he actually has absorbed magic with his swords before, and it didn't destroy the magic. But I also believe that this was foreshadowed early in the movie that Asta would be able to use the Imperial Sword. Remember that Conrad fully believed that he could take away and steal Asta's anti-magic and use it for himself. He just didn't do it because he didn't want to risk the anti-magic affecting the other magic that he had stolen. But he also says that his magic and the Imperial Sword work very similar to the other, and that is why they are very compatible, which I find to be foreshadowing that if the sword worked similar to Conrad's magic, and Conrad's magic can steal anti-magic, then the Imperial Sword can just work with anti-magic because of the similarities. But let's say none of my theories are right. I still don't think that this is a crazy big deal. Let's just think of it like Asta has fallen down. His anti-magic takes one arm, and the Imperial Sword takes the other arm, and the two work together to pick him up from the ground. They don't have to touch each other, but they can still both apply their forces without interacting with the other, and thus Asta can use magic. And I'm sure people think that Asta shouldn't be able to use magic even if it was gifted to him because he wouldn't know how to control it, but it has been stated that the energy of anti-magic actually works similar to magic. While they are different energies, how you actually use them and make them work is the same. So it shouldn't be that hard for Asta to learn magic. This is further supported in the Land of the Sun arc, where Asta can use
Asta
ki to amplify his anti-magic power, just like Mage.
We've seen Asta like really just take control over on like Kai and like learn stuff extremely fast. So I wouldn't be surprised if he learned how to use magic very fast anyway.
Is due to their magic power. You could also argue that Asta is actually controlling the anti-magic so that it doesn't destroy the magic within the Imperial Sword. Regardless of whether this makes sense or you think it's like a glaring plot hole, even though I disagree with that, it doesn't really matter. Let's talk about how stupid strong Asta is with the Imperial Sword. And let's not forget that Asta was already very strong before he even got the sword, as he did a higher level of his Devil Arm than he did against 80% Dante, which should mean that he would be far stronger than the Dante in the Spade Saga and Asta with his Devil Arm at that point in the Spade Saga as well. When it comes to how strong this would make Asta, well, if you look at it, 80% Dante would be small planetary at the very least, and likely planetary, as he scales many thousands of times stronger than the Fire Spirit Salamander, which can vaporize oceans, and that requires multi-continental levels of energy. Also, Reeve and Dorothy created moons back in the Elf Arc, which would put Asta scaling around this tier of planetary, if not even higher. It also is stated that Dante has infinite mana, which is supported by him creating a singularity. Singularities require an infinite amount of energy because it makes mass infinitely dense. And he does scale way above Dorothy and Reeve, who created infinite-sized magical spaces, which could mean that Dante is actually on the level of High Universal, or literally infinite power. And Devil Arm Asta in this movie is way stronger than the Devil's Bargain Asta in the Spade Saga, because movie Asta has an additional horn and wing, as well as extra markings. And we also know that the base Asta in this movie should be just as strong as the base Asta in the beginning of the Spade Saga, because both the movie and the Spade Saga take place in the same few days, as Luck stated that it had been 3 months since he had seen Asta in the light novel, but in the anime canon, they were already 3 months done with their training when Luck saw Asta, which means that this has to have been 6 months later. So at the very least, movie Asta is above the 80% Dark Triad, with planetary to literally infinite attack potency scaling. But when Asta received the Imperial Sword, he immediately gains access to the power of all the previous Wizard Kings. But then, all of the Knights of the Clover Kingdom also give their power to him. All of the captains, all of the Knights, hell, even Noct makes an appearance just to give his power towards Asta. But we need to remember that the Imperial Sword doesn't just take magic power, it takes the spells, and a fraction of the souls of those as well. Based on what the sword is stated to do in the movie, this means we can actually look at every single person who placed their power within the Imperial Sword and get an attempt of actually scaling the power of Asta here. In order to get any sort of quantification of how strong Asta would be while wielding the Imperial Sword, we would need to analyze literally every single person that placed their essence into the sword, discuss the power of each and every one of their spells, and then stack them together to determine how strong Asta is. But that would really take way too long for just a YouTube video. This Asta, for one, should just be stronger than every single Wizard King combined, because it was stated that they all gave him their power in order to stop Conrad's most powerful spell, Doom's Gate. Unfortunately, we can't really determine the full power of Imperial Sword Asta, because we only know a handful of these Wizard Kings: Lumiere, Princia, Jester, Edward, and Conrad. It is possible that Julius's magic is in there as well, or maybe even Lucius put his power into the sword, and that's why it did do soul-related things. The reason I mention Lucius is because Asta's slash actually knocked Conrad's soul from his body, but this could just be a part of the power of the Imperial Sword that it already has, because we know that it had soul manipulation already. While you may not know it, Asta adding Lumiere's power to himself actually isn't going to be that crazy in terms of a power boost. Lumiere couldn't even defeat Demon Licht without using a magic item to absorb his power, whereas Licht was so afraid of Zagrid taking his body and manifesting that he allowed himself to become an ancient demon, meaning that a manifested Zagrid is even stronger than Demon Licht. Zagrid is only around the level of Black Divider Asta in the Elf arc, and the Asta in this movie is easily hundreds of times stronger after the many months of training and surpassing his limits. I mean, we can tell just by looking at him, his base form is way stronger, he's way more muscular, and his Black Dividers are way bigger in this movie than he did against Zagrid. Unless if the Wizard Kings are just that much stronger than Lumiere, then it might actually be that the Imperial boost takes in magic, and it's an exponential boost in power, not just a linear boost. It would be kind of similar to the Spirit Bomb in Dragon Ball. Goku only took a small amount of Genki from the planet, and it was enough to go against a character who was beyond planetary in Vegeta. But anyways, of course, there are many more characters who added their power to Asta's Imperial Spirit Bomb. Pretty much all of the captains and Black Bulls. Now again, it would be really hard to quantify the energy levels contained within the sword, but what we can do is pick out some of the strongest spells from the people within the swords and discuss how strong that would make Asta, because their spells are a part of the sword. And I think that we can already look at some of the strongest ones, both old and new, and determine what Asta is wielding against Conrad. Well, we actually do that some of the craziest spells in Black Clover would be contained within the sword. If we look specifically at the spells from Edward, Princia, Dorothy, and Yami, we know that Edward's power is contained within the sword, and we know that his ability is Ice Wedge Magic, which allows him to reduce the temperature of space to absolute zero. That's not 0 degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius, that's 0 degrees Kelvin, which is negative 273 degrees Celsius or negative 460 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember that temperature is the gauging of heat. Absolute zero means that there is zero heat. Heat is energy. Energy is required for movement. And that means he would be shutting off all movement, which means that anybody who can move in his absolute zero has really good hacks in terms of resistances to temperature manipulation. And if you look into the actual physics of absolute zero, it seems to be a nigh impossible thing to actually happen, as you would need infinite work or energy or infinite time in order to reach absolute zero. Now you could say that the absolute zero is a hack that doesn't necessarily scale to Edward, but at this point it doesn't matter because it's fused within the sword. So that sword absorbed that Hax, which has infinite energy, and it is combining it with everything else. This could mean that Asta has infinite power while wielding the sword. But if we keep going, we also know that Princia Funny Bunny's magic is contained within the Imperial Sword. Her magic allows her to create infinite soldiers, which basically infinite anything is still infinite power. Like if someone destroyed an infinite amount of pieces of paper with a single shot, that would still mean they have infinite power or high universal attack potency. Even if these soldiers were as weak as regular humans, which we know are not the case, an infinite amount of humans would be infinite energy. Then of course we got Glamour World. Dorothy gave her essence to the Imperial Sword, which means that her Glamour World spell would be contained within the weapon. Glamour World is an infinite-sized magical space that Dorothy creates. It is stated to be endless by luck, and then Magna disputes it as being impossible, but Reeve affirms that by saying the impossible is possible in Glamour World, and therefore Glamour World is an infinite-sized realm. So that means an infinite magical realm of dreams is fused inside of the Imperial Sword. Basically another infinite power
really
compressed
be like
inside of the sword. Also, Yami's Dimension / Equinox would also be placed inside the sword, with this spell being so strong that after its hacks split the world in half, it caused the world to fall apart and completely shatter. So the force of Dimension / Equinox is also high universal. That is contained inside of the Imperial Sword, and also being amplified by the power of every single Wizard King, every captain, and nearly every single member of the Magic Knights. So we have infinite energy from Absolute Zero, infinite soldiers, an infinite universe, and a slash that can destroy an infinite universe, all contained within this weapon. And we know that Asta's slash is actually using all of this power, because if you see the design of the slash, it has varying colors of the different magical attributes contained within. Now if you disagree with this scaling, that's fine. People will argue that Asta never actually used all of the power of the sword, but that's incorrect because we saw it dim and break. People will also say that it was his anti-magic that dimmed the power of the blade, but that would just mean his anti-magic shut off an infinite amount of magic, which is really just as crazy. But even then, if we throw away any of the universal scaling for this sword, the power of this meteor by Conrad has been calculated to be between moon level and large planetary, and the Imperial Sword destroyed it. You might think that this is the strongest version of Asta, and this is Asta's peak in all of Black Clover, and I understand why, but we can compare this moment to later parts of the manga to prove that it's not. For example, we can look at Nox's reaction to the meteor, and he was kinda chillin', but when he saw Fusion Lilith in the manga, he nearly was driven insane, which could imply that Fusion Lilith has stronger magic than Doom's Gate, and therefore that would be more magic power than Conrad or Imperial Sword Asta. Though you could argue that because of the many thousands of miles away the meteor is from Nox, and Nalith was right next to him, that this is not a fair comparison. But we do know at the very least, Lucifer with half his power power is stronger than Imperial Sword Asta, because Lucius has full knowledge of how strong people are over many different timelines, yet he agreed that 50% Lucifero had the greatest magic power. So that means that 50% Lucifero is stronger than Imperial Sword Asta. That would mean that True Devil Union Asta is stronger than Imperial Sword Asta because he beat him, and that would mean that actually now many characters in the final arc of Black Clover do scale above Imperial Sword Asta. And also, the crazy thing is, if we assume that Asta can use the Imperial Sword the way it was designed, that would mean that Asta has an amount of abilities that just skyrockets to what he had before. Asta then could use light magic, dark magic, fire magic, hell, he could probably control fate, or even use Conrad's key magic himself. There are so many unique and powerful abilities contained within the weapon that can make Asta one of the most versatile characters in all of fiction. Transformation magic, cotton and food magic, mirror magic, all kinds of spatial magic, shadow magic which he can make clones of himself with. While this might not be the strongest Asta that we've seen, it is the most versatile Asta if he can use the sword to its fullest potential. This makes me wonder if, we get end of series Asta, how strong he is. I might have to make a video of how strong he would be if he had the Imperial Sword. Or guys, do you want other videos, like, do you want me to do a, like, what if Yami wielded the Imperial Sword, how strong would they be, or something like that? But yeah guys, Imperial Sword Asta is broken. He surpasses all of the Wizard Kings, barring like a Prime Julius or Lucius. Those guys are just completely built different, and they're not technically a part of the sword. They're not a part of that combined power that Asta uses, but I do want to kind of gloat for a bit, because there are a certain subsection of the Black Clover community who attacks my power scaling takes. I actually enjoy when people do push back on my power scaling analysis, especially if the quote-unquote debunks are high effort, or if they actually do correct my mistakes, because I do make mistakes sometimes. But most of the time, it's just pseudo-intellectual, anti-power scalers who still attempt to power scale anyways. A couple years ago, I made a video talking about why Devil Union Asta was Wizard King level, and I got so much hate for that video, saying I was dumb for even thinking that. But now we can see the Black Clover movie, where Asta fights a Wizard King, that is Conrad. The Wizard King uses the Imperial Sword to combine his power with every single Wizard King in the past, and surpasses that. And yet Asta in the movie, with his Devil's Arm, is able to fight Conrad and defeat him. Keep in mind that Devil Arm Asta from the movie should be a lot weaker than Devil Union Asta.
Easily. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe. Bro, Devil Union Asta is on a whole different level then. If Asta with magic is that strong, and then, but he's not even comparable to Devil Union Asta. There is some crazy feats, bro. There are some crazy feats. And yeah, I am out. Peace.